We have a lot of hard-working men out there that are busting their butt to try to change the circumstances in their life, and they feel like it doesn't work. They feel like no matter how hard they work, things do not change. Now, I did a solid video on the hard work trap. I think that's definitely worth watching. This is a little bit more practical into the actual, like, your hand, like working with your hands and beyond, that I think is going to help a lot of men. And if you're like me and you grew up with the hard work mentality or the grind mentality, watch this to the end, because I'm gonna give you something way better than that that'll actually move the needle on the things that you want in your life. Now, as some groundwork, it's important to understand, as a foundational understanding about work, is there's two types of work that's always going down. And so even when it doesn't feel like work is working, as long as you can get to an aware, conscious space, or a place where you're just aware enough to what's happening in your life and you're not just on autopilot. And if you can get to that place, all right, I promise you that all work works. My bad, quick jump cut. Had to go. We had some groceries getting delivered, but all work works. What that means is that you could be, there's the thing that you're working on, and you know, you have your expectations of it, you have your plans that you want to succeed. But even when it feels like those aren't going to plan, the work is working back on you. And so when you're building the business and it's not growing as fast as you want, you're working to improve the relationship and it doesn't feel like it's working, I promise you, even though the results aren't here yet, it is building results in you if you will allow it. And if you go back and watch my video on the two worlds, there's power in that, because the outer world and our circumstances, it comes from the inner world. Again, I go into much more detail in that video, so go check that out. But that's the basis here. You got to understand that all work works. Now, as we move into diligence, I'm going to draw this, as 3 levels of diligence. Now, you can't be at level 1 or level 2 diligence and still consider it diligence. It's not diligence until all 3 levels are activated. It's just separated in ways for us to talk about it and understand it. All right. Now, also, I'm going to be drawing it kind of going down, like on a sheet of paper. But then maybe at the end, I'd rather you visualize it as you can move up, like a pyramid. All right. And to the point where, and maybe we'll just try to keep this over here as a visual. To the point when you get towards the top of diligence, you actually need less work because you're working with so much leverage. Like, you need less physical effort in the 3-dimensional world to get a lot done. That's why it's in a pyramid. But as you work on the lower levels, level 1 and 2, you need much more work because you're working with less leverage. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's erase that and let's get into it. So level 1, and I'm going to give myself some more space. Might zoom out a tad. Yeah, a little some of that. Yeah, that works. All right, level 1 is all about working with your hands. Okay, now inside of each level, there's 3 parts as well. Like that. Y'all know that's a pyramid over there. All right, level 1 is working with your hands. Now, there's 3 parts to this. I'm going to write them all, and then we'll come back and talk about them, okay? So, passion. I'm actually going to do passionate. That connects a little bit weird, but y'all know I write like it's Hebrew, all right? That's the passionate work. Then you need to be able to bring the prepared work. And then lastly, we have the haste work. What does this mean, Dion? Let's talk about it. Now, again, this is when you are working, and this also pairs very well. You notice we have a lot of symmetry between things. And if you guys want like all of this to feel even more like together, use the link in the description. Check out our coaching. That's going to always beat you getting random videos. Now, I do a lot of these videos to answer questions and have videos to send to people that I'm talking about or talking to, but it's all over the place. Okay, and if you guys want all of this, but in a more systematic daily hand-holding way, check out the link in the description, okay? creatorgame.com. You know, a couple people have been writing me like, yo, when's the next video on your coaching page? This isn't meant to just be like a daily tickle session. That doesn't do much for you, right? Just learning for the sake of learning. You're much better getting a foundation, building on that, and actually getting places. That being said, for someone that is really struggling, and this is your biggest area of weakness, this will do a lot for you. Now, let me get back to this. Now, working with your hand. Oh, what I was going to say is this also ties back to the video I did on identity and power and the 3 levels of identity that we have there. And one of the most basic, grueling, hardest ways that we can work is with our hands. You know, now, and if this is you, you know you work very hard, but you may not make a lot of money. Think of someone like maybe a construction worker. Now, it's crazy. I got clients in construction. There's a lot of money in construction. It's just typically not the guys, like with their boots on the ground. You know what I mean? Actually doing the work. But I have clients that own construction companies that make loads of money. And as we go through this framework, you'll kind of see why they make more money. But they're not the ones actually working with their hands. Now, but if you can master just this first level of diligence, you'll separate yourself from the vast majority of men out there in the workplace and just in any area that you apply diligence towards. That could be your spirituality, your relationships, all of that. Now, the passionate work, and this is the lowest level again. If we were to chart this would be like this little A level. This is step 1. I want you to think of these building up. So the passionate work is usually what you see people glorify these days, just being passionate, working hard. This is like classical hard work. And that's the lowest level of what we work with here. So you have to be willing to give it your heart, give it your all, try really hard. That's like the barrier of entry. But if you stick to doing that, and that's the only thing you know how to do, that'll leave you in a state of survival and living like an animal, very cyclical. You won't see your life really taking off like you want. You'll just be, because it's very reactive, and you're going to go from passion to pain and passion to pain. Like things go good, then there's some suffering that follows it. Things that go good, and there's suffering around it. And then if you can relate to that, and that is your life experience, and you're like, but Dion, I work hard. Why isn't my life changing? It's because you're very passionate. And there's value in that in like the 3-dimensional world, and it can make you useful, but that's like the lowest level of working, and you really want to build on that. The next level of that is bringing some preparation. So many people are passionate. I talk to men every day that are passionate about some sort of craft or skill or vision. They want to be a musician, an entrepreneur, a content creator, a family man, and they are working hard towards it. But it's a very reactive kind of work. It's where they're busy all day, but they're not really taking the time to sit back and just bring their best. And even a little, like as much as 5-10 minutes of preparation before, you know, depending on the work that you're doing here. Obviously, there's a wide range of things you guys could be working on, but for the most part, 5-10 minutes does a lot of magic. The bigger projects, you can just start spending hours, days prepping, and you'll notice that makes all the difference. And in the little bit that you weren't separating from with working passionately, you bring some prepared work to it, you almost got the rest of people. Now, the last, paced work, this is all about speed. This is urgency. Now, sometimes people mistake this for passion because they're always moving. This is why we added the preparedness. Like, you always want to move as fast as possible, or as fast as you can move while being prepared. I call it prepared urgency. If you can move with that, that's the sweet spot. And there's so many people that, you know, and I've experienced this personally. I'm not trying to talk down on anyone, but how many things have you delayed for days, weeks, months, years? Some of things that could have been handled in minutes. Like, there's things I delayed years and years, and then once I started it, you know, for example, launching my business, something I delayed for months. Business was done, everything was ready to go. I was just scared. But the actual launching process and getting this stuff out there was not difficult, and it changed my life. it could be a workout journey, a getting an email back to your employer. You know, are you taking end of day when it could be end of the hour? Are you taking a week to do something that could take 8 minutes to do? Right? When you get a text message, you have the time to reply to it, but you're delaying unnecessarily. This is about pace. Don't hear hurry, don't hear frantic, hear prepared urgency. All right. So your pace is anchored by that preparedness. Now, if you master this right here, the ability to effectively work with your hands, bring passionate, prepared, and paced work, man, you will be very, very useful. And think of like someone working on the front lines of something, maybe like we said in construction. When you start to really navigate that, you'll prosper. And sometimes people think, oh, you're a hard worker, I should move you up to like management. But if you just bring that same mentality to something like management, people will notice it doesn't transition. It doesn't transition right because the skills are different. And you can't just passionately work at things. You got to go from just moving the hands and using the head. And that's where level 2 is. And this as well has 3 parts to it as well. And I'm going to lay them out and then we'll come back and talk about it. So number 1 is consistent, and all of these are going to be consistent. Consistent clarity, consistent context, and consistent creativity. All right, now when you notice, you start to apply not just your hands but your head to situations. For the man that says, you know, the work isn't working, all right, you struggle to move it, this is when you start to get some momentum in that area and move things that weren't moving with just your hands. And again, I really emphasize consistent here because so many men think it's okay to just do this occasionally, every now and then. I want this level of clarity towards your work to be the new standard, not something you do when you have to, right? And that's why all 3 of these need to be together for it to be diligent. And you'll notice some of you guys do a lot of these, but you're kind of like all over the place. Like you might have some of this down, some of this down, and that's why your work isn't effective. All right. So consistently clear, and we're talking about consistent clarity, clear on yourself, the project, what's expected of you. Man, I have paid for a lot of work over the years to employees, contractors, you know, I've been an employee, and so I've seen a lot of work out there. And something I can appreciate the most is people that don't move forward until they are clear on the goals. And it's frustrating when you think you explain something clearly, someone's nodding their head to you like, yeah, I got it. And then they go move forward and fluff it up. And that's very easy to step over the clarity step when you're extremely passionate. Because you just got that fire burning and you got to go, you got to move. And you don't slow down enough to get clear on, all right, what's the mission here? And what role do I play in this? So I want you to think of like a sports analogy is like being in a position, knowing your play for that, knowing what your responsibility is for that play. Let's say you're a quarterback, all right, or a running back. What is my job here? And making sure you're clear. And we don't say ready, break, and we break the huddle and you're out there confused. You'll be surprised how many people that work really hard, but again, it's still in this like reactive hands space. Bring some clarity to it. Watch magic happen. Next, consistent in the context. So this is, where does this project, this goal, this whatever, where does it fit into the bigger game that I'm playing? So yes, I need to know my role and be clear for this play, going back to the sports analogy. But what context does this play have in the game, in the drive, right? So maybe my role is to get open as a running back or I'm a little check down route. That's my role, but after I catch it, what context? Do I need to get out of bounds? Do we need a first down? Am I staying in bounds? What is the context? You're growing a business. What is this context as you're growing the business in your family? The context it plays with your faith. your other relationships, all right, your mental, physical health, not just being clear on how to execute in the business, but what's the broader context, all right? And then when you do this, you're able to even add some cool overlaps, like maybe bringing skills from other places into this specific project that you're working on. Again, I don't want to go into too many details on specifics because this framework is general enough for all work. And I want you to use this as like an audit tool as well of like, all right, I see where I'm doing this, but I'm not doing that. I need to do better. And then last is consistent creativity. It's looking at what's working, what's not working. What are new solutions that we can try? What are ways that we can do this better, faster, hold ourselves more accountable? Is there a whole new approach that we can take to things? And what sucks is a lot of people try to skip to like this. They try to be really creative, but they have no working insight or understanding of what they're doing. There's no clarity or context. And so your creativity never sticks. And you're just pulling random inspiration from places. But when it's in this slot, right? Remember, let's go back to our triangle that my big head is covering. So in this first level, we had 3 layers that we're building on. And then here we got 3 layers. The real creativity is activated here in this spot after we've handled our business in these other layers. All right. And then all of and don't beat yourself up if you struggle at a lot of these or you feel like you're deaf, and you can understand why you're definitely struggling or you're stuck in like this hands area. Of course, the goal is to move with all of these at once, or you're not being diligent. You have to understand that. But if you can fall somewhere into like the level 1, level 2 areas and continue to build and work on this, like I said, the work will work on you and you'll get better at all of this. So it's not about saying, dang, I'm not diligent, throwing a pity party. It's working on the weaknesses and watching that feedback loop work back on you. Okay, next we have working in heaven. Oh, I got to pause here for a minute though. All right, because some of y'all want to go crazy and take this the wrong way. I do not mean there's a little man in the sky and this is you here working hard and things aren't working like we said. And so you just sit here and pray and hope that God moves this for you because you are unwilling to. It frustrates me how many men I talk to that have real pain, real problems, real things that are going on. I'm like, what are you doing to fix it, my man? Like, I'm just praying. You've been praying for 6 years and nothing's changed. That's all you're doing is praying. Like, think about it. Like, just slow down the game for a little bit. You believe in a creator. You believe in him loving you. You believe that he created and gave you faculties like your mind, your body, this ability to think and dissect and choose and grow. And there's even commandments for things for you to do. But you believe this area that you prayed on consistently for however long, and there's been no movement in it. It's just like, I'm going to need to pray some more. It's like, wake up. Wake up, brother. God could have made you a robot if he just needed to send little iOS updates every now and then, little prayer downloads. Like, oh, you need an update, you need a business, you need money, bet, download. Could have been a robot. I really want you to consider that you would get so much further if you would look at your situations practically and do the practical work towards it and stop looking at prayer from this perspective. Maybe I'll do a whole nother video on prayer. Let me know if y'all want that. But if you would just be honest with yourself, please. So many people jump into spirituality and they just stop being intellectually honest to the life that you live every single day. I think everyone here would be better if they just stopped trying to pray their problems away, worked through their problems. And I'll leave that there. So when I'm saying working in heaven, this is not anywhere close to what I'm talking about. I'm talking about heaven coming to earth in a way of more of like a level of consciousness, a perspective, a place of being. All right. You working, and it gets really hard to describe and talk about this because it's beyond the mind and is beyond the body. And so, like, what is your mind except a bunch of concepts and things that you've, in thoughts and ideas and beliefs that you've collected throughout the years, right? There's a whole world and experience beyond that. And if you do believe in the divine, something outside of time and space, you can see how we struggle to specifically talk about it and frame it and bottle it up and package it in a certain way. But also, I do believe heaven can come to earth, and this is something that we can experience. And it's by design how things should be. Okay, I'm trying not to get into philosophies as much and just give you guys practical work, but please, this is what I mean when I talk about this. Okay, all right, another jump cut. Your boy had a time sensitive text I was looking out for. I had to get back to, but now we can talk about what I mean by heaven, and I use that time to already write this out for us. Now, when we get to this phase of work, which is the level 3, the third level of diligence, what made me think I was going to fit that triangle, all 3 levels, even with that triangle? That's kind of crazy. So let's break this down. Leveraging identity. Again, I did a whole video on power and identity that I think goes into more detail here, but I'm going to give you some here. It's this idea that you have levels of being that you can bring to every situation. All right. So let's say, I don't know why I just keep drawing a block is whatever you're working on, because I want it to be vague. Let's just say this is a relationship for this example. Let's say 7 days of the week, you could approach that relationship from 7 different perspectives, even though you're the same person, human, right? And when we're talking about levels of being, it's almost like views that you would have on a mountain, right? If you were down here, your view of reality would be way different than if you were up here. Oh, and I'm cutting you off a little bit. And this is a very important point to note, because you could approach this relationship from a place of like guilt or shame or fear, and think about how you would look at the actions of that person and how narrow your view is and how selfish it might be, and how much you would be in survival mode versus you being in a place of peace, right? Or a place of even just happiness, joy, and I don't want to put too many labels on it, because I want you to move from your experience and whatever your highest high is. And I want you to fall in love with trying to learn to control your inner world, because that's the only place you have total control. You don't have control in the outer world. I have a video on how to handle your emotions. Check that out. But it's worth you really taking that serious, because if not, one, you'll always be a slave to the outer world, but you won't be the effective worker that you're looking to be. And when I say work, I'm not a worker. I don't mean just at a job. I'm saying working towards anything. So back to the example of a relationship. Think of the times where you've been just the fullest, the happiest, the highest, whatever you can think of. And maybe that's not peace and tranquility, or what someone might call enlightenment. There's so many words people might have for it. Bliss, whatever yours is. All right. Maybe yours is just like chill, cool, whatever it is. I want you to think of how you felt then and towards people and circumstances versus when you were deep in fear and stress and worry and shame and guilt and all of that. That's what we're talking about with identity. It's like, what level of being are we identifying with? Are we caught up in our passionate, animalistic stuff down here? Or are we moving our awareness up a little bit to like our human experience? Again, I did a whole video on this. That's the identity and power video. Or are you identifying with your divinity? And the example I love to use is like a video game. You can be in the video game, but not of the video game. You could be playing Fortnite, but notice that you are not the character itself. And that actually helps you play Fortnite better. And the more of this perspective that we can take to the work that we do, it truly changes the game. And it allows us to step into the infinite game, which I did another video on, the infinite game, finite versus infinite games, we can see how this finite game might fit into the bigger infinite game of life, and we approach it from that perspective. All right, that's the difference between playing Fortnite and thinking your life truly depends on it, and realizing, this is a game to be played and to be enjoyed, but not to win. Like the infinite game, you don't win it, and so you have that perspective of life that you bring into the finite game that you may be trying to win. An analogy I use, or a story I use often, maybe too much, is a hard lesson I learned in Bible study. Not Bible study, but hanging out with new church friends we had made. We went to, I don't know why I call it a Bible study. It was a game night, like a little Christian game night. And we would play games like Monopoly and whatnot. And I would win the majority of those, but I would like make side deals. I can turn on competition to the max. The only problem is that doesn't fit in an infinite game. In a finite game, you need it for the finite games to work. And so, like, Monopoly doesn't work if people are like, oh, I don't care. I don't want to win. There's no fun in it. But I took the finite game so serious that I would backstab people. I would legit have husbands turning against their wives to cut them out of deals and bring me in. And I'm creating alliances. And I would win the finite game. But then guess what? That game would end. We'd put all the pieces back in the box. And all the people around the table were pissed at me in the infinite game of life. And sometimes with our work, we can get so tunnel vision on making it happen that sometimes other dimensions in our life, people we care about, end up becoming casualties. And we suffer in the infinite game, and the finite game is what costs us that. All right? And so when we can move into this higher perspective, you can see how this moves you into even bigger places of income too, because this is when you are a world changer. This is when you are a visionary. You can create visions big enough. As a leader, you can create visions big enough for other people's visions to fit into. Whether it's your family members, you want to have team members. They got visions, they got hopes, they got dreams. And when you can have a vision big enough that's not selfish, that's not about you, that you can look at from an infinite perspective, identifying from divinity and not your survival needs, you can create stuff like this. And then this opens you up to, again, something that's so hard to talk about, to label, to package, but it's insight. And anyone that knows what insight is, that's when you start to learn things in motion of doing things. For example, I've been a content creator for over a decade. People have a perspective on it from the outside looking in. Like think of like an iceberg. They say that's an ugly iceberg, but they say 2/3 of the size of it is underneath the water, right? So there's what you can see, and you're like, oh yeah, it's easy, it's this, it's that, and then people always tell me once they get started, it is not what I thought. You know what I mean? Because I didn't see all of this stuff down here, right? But when you're actually doing all of the other stuff, consciously work, and we're getting into stuff that you're doing that's beyond the actual work. So when you're tunnel vision, like working on the business, and you don't worry about the energy you bring to the business, you miss this. And this is why you can't build anything that has eternal qualities that last and can stand turbulent times. They're just gone because you're creating from a finite mentality. And so when you can really take the time to work on your levels of being, you're meditating, you're doing the spirituality, but not trying to get stuff out of it in a selfish way. It's more of a surrendering and more of a letting go. And then you stop showing up to things needing them to happen for you to feel significant. You're doing it from a place of significance. You're already victorious and you're creating, not creating to be victorious. It completely changes the game, and it changes how you look at what you're doing. Maybe an analogy I can give you, imagine you had your favorite food to eat and it filled you up for the rest of forever. You never had to eat again. I gave you a bank account that was unlimited. You could just spend whatever you want. I gave you a spouse that loved you, could never cheat, fulfilled everything, right? You had just no desires. think of how differently you would look at the world. You wouldn't look at it from a place of needing anything. You have no needs. It would be from a place of contribution, of service. And to the person that's super needy, that sounds horrible. They're like, whoa, 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 what about me? What about me? You got to fully take on the analogy. You need nothing. And so you show up with a whole different view of life, and that creates insights, not in the weird heavenly downloads we were talking about before, but in a way that I can't tell you, you got it from here, you got it from there. It's tapped into an infinite intelligence that is so far beyond this world that we know as a three-dimensional space. Okay? And that's why it gets weird. You're like, damn, why are you slowing down so much? You're stuttering talking about this because it's hard to put words to it, ninja. I could tell you ABC 1, 2, 3. This is beyond that. And it's such an unselfish, pure game that I can't ABC 1, 2, 3 it. It really is about you being able to sit down, stop identifying with all your passions, and learn to just let that stuff settle. And look at some of the other videos we have on infinite finite games, dealing with your emotions. And then you start transmuting that passion as it gets to the head. The fire in your hands isn't what's moving, and the fire in your heart isn't what's moving. You can calmly see things differently, see the context that it lives in, give creative solutions. And as you patiently work on things, work on yourself, your level of being, you raise that, you tap into the infinite, and you get infinite insights. That is diligence, my ninja. You start working like that, things can't help but move. I'm sorry, I get a little excited, but I've just watched this play out in my own life. I've watched it played out in clients' life for over a decade. And if you have eyes that can hear and you really look at the world and try to get what I'm saying, you can see how some of the greatest thinkers, leaders, you can see how they were moving with diligence. It wasn't just one piece of this. Now, I will say as you move up, so example, as I've grown my business and moved up into leadership, and there's a lot of things I don't necessarily do with my hands, that doesn't mean I'm still not moving with these principles. I still have the fire, all right? It's just when all of these are activated, this does not rule me, right? I would not consider myself a passionate man at all. And I would love for you guys to check that link in the description and really get some of my teachings. You really understand what we do with passion and how bad passion on its own and misunderstood is for your life. But like as you mature up these, you can see how you can grow, be a better leader, make more money. But that doesn't mean that you still don't move with speed and I don't prepare or, like I said, have that fire that's burning. It's just how it looks is differently. I may just not be editing and typing and grinding all day. That's because I have more of the leverage here, right? And this is the leverage here, right? Like when you get to this, the leverage is crazy. You can say a few words to people, very few words, but just because you see directly to the problem with wisdom, what it is, what they're really struggling with, and you're not just tunnel vision on getting a result, you see them as the human that they are, you could say a few words to a teammate, to an employee, to a contractor. They go straight to the heart of the situation of the project and what they're dealing with, that it fires them up, motivates them, inspires them in a whole new way. And so it's still tons of work getting done, and you're moving with all of these principles, your just hands aren't in it as much. And that's where the leverage comes from. And that's why a lot of you guys have this desire to not work hard and long hours and have a lot of money. That's very possible in this economy, in this day and age. And I think your fastest way to get there is through diligence, not through hard work. Get that out of there. All right. Now your homework, very simple. Link in the description. Check that out. That's your best bet. You want to become a self-reliant, diligent man. I've created a whole gamified system for you. If you're really not serious, you're a dabbler, cool, I get it. Your homework is to use this framework, okay? Go back, rewatch the video, take notes, and do an audit on yourself. List all of these steps out. Okay, you got the 9 steps, and grade yourself, right? How well am I doing these? And it's not just am I doing it or am I not doing it? Although there could be some things you're not doing. That's the question you really want to ask. How well am I doing it? So could I bring a better pace to work? Am I taking too long to get things? You may be decent, but can you do better? This is the meditation. And look at what bubbles up. And then when things bubble up, be diligent about getting it done. All right, if that blessed you, please let me know in the comments. If you guys have any questions, drop those down below as well. And until next time, God first, God bless.